Hello cricket fans and welcome back to the channel for a classic of I predicted every result of the World T20 and it's the Super 8s. If you're new around here, please consider subscribing. If you are currently subscribed, consider staying subscribed, and if you are interested in supporting the content in any way, shape or form, liking the video, commenting on the video, and also potentially considering joining the Patreon would be really good. The group stages, well, they're done. They're done, and we know who's made it through to the Super 8s. The best 8 teams in world cricket, well, T20 cricket right now, are as follows. And I'm just going to check my notes here because I'm not clever enough to remember them. In Group 1 of the Super 8s, we have Afghanistan, Australia, Bangladesh, and India. And I think we possibly might know the 2 teams that are going through that group. And then in Group 2 of the Super 8s, we have England, South Africa, the United States of America, and of course, the other hosts, the West Indies. First game of the Super 8s, we have South Africa taking on the United States of America in Antigua. Now, there's been a few games in Antigua so far. It's not exactly been a run fest. The England versus Namibia game would be the anomaly, which was obviously rain affected down to a T10, and it was pretty high scoring. England obviously winning that game, which took them through to the Super 8s. Kind of feel like the lower the score, the better chance the US have actually got of competing in these games. You look at South Africa's lineup and you think the runs that they scored throughout the IPL, kind of feel like, yeah, there's a lot of runs to be scored. If South Africa get a bucketful, which they could, I don't see the USA coming back. And I think the likelihood is although the United States obviously upset Pakistan, first time we'll see them in the Caribbean, I feel like South Africa are going to pick up that win, get those first 2 points. Second game of the Super 8s, England take on the hosts West Indies in St. Lucia. England haven't really fired, have they? I mean, they snuck through the group with that rain-affected tie or the non-result against Scotland. Scotland ran Australia pretty close, and on another day, actually, England could have found themselves going home. But they made it. They made it through to the Super 8s, and as I say, they opened their account in this group of the tournament against the West Indies in St. Lucia. So far, there's only been, well, 2 games have been played in St. Lucia up to the point of recording this. There is another one at 1:30 in the morning today, but the benefit of knowing who's in there in the Super 8s is I can get on with these before we even get there. And there's been a lot of runs scored. 186 played 180. Then Sri Lanka scored 201 for 6. There is a lot of talk about St. Lucia being a run fest, and that was the headlines that I read earlier today. I don't know. I just don't know about this England team. I really don't. We saw them go to the West Indies and we saw the West Indies do really well against them not that long ago. The West Indies are powerful. They know how to play in St. Lucia. They've got a lot of runs in that team. England's, I mean, on their day, that batting lineup with Salt and Jacks and Butler, Bairstow, etc. should put anybody under pressure. We just haven't really seen England's day for a while. And that's what concerns me. And I feel like the West Indies, I do feel the West Indies are going to win that game. Third game in Bridgetown, Barbados, Afghanistan take on India. Afghanistan have qualified for the Super 8s, one of the smaller nations in world cricket, through to the next round of the T20 World Cup. But they do have to play against who probably are the favourites of the competition, aren't they? Let's be honest. India have been brilliant. They've got a fantastic team. They're so well geared up for T20 cricket. I don't see Afghanistan getting through this round of the Super 8s. India and Australia will in this group, and I think India will win in Barbados. Continues in Group 1. Second game in Group 1. Fourth game of the Super 8s. Australia take on Bangladesh, this time in Antigua. And again, it's really hard to kind of look past Australia. They've just piled runs on, haven't they? They absolutely battered England in Barbados and absolutely slapped them. I don't see the most optimistic of Bangladesh supporters really kind of putting £2 on them. Australia are going to beat them. They're going to get 2 points, and India are going to have 2. Australia are going to have 2. Back to St. Lucia, and England take on South Africa. Now, again, this is going to be really similar for England with that West Indies game. I look at England, South Africa, West Indies in Group 2 of the Super 8s, and I think you're all really, really closely matched. And I think it's going to be difficult to separate them. We are led to believe that St. Lucia is an absolute batting paradise. So at that point there, you're kind of thinking any one of these lineups can really go for it. I don't know whether South Africa's are going to be better suited to it or England's are going to be better suited. It could be a 50-50. If, of course, England have lost that first one, then it's going to be a case of the headline's going to go, oh, well, England need to win this one to stay in the competition, and Butler might get sacked, and Mottgart might get sacked. And so therefore, I think England are going to win that one. Barbados, West Indies versus the USA. The two hosts go head-to-head in the Super 8s. I just don't see the USA continuing their run. I don't see them carrying it on. I think the West Indies are going to be too strong, and yeah, they're going to pick up another point, which will take them to 4 points, which I think at that stage there is going to pretty much guarantee them through a spot into the semi-finals, as I think they'll beat England, and I think then they'll beat the USA. Obviously, they'll still have South Africa to play. I think the way it's going to go, those 3 teams will finish on 4 points, and it will be a net run rate job. Antigua, Bangladesh versus India. Again, I don't want to disrespect Bangladesh. I don't see how you can bet on anybody other than India. I just don't. I mean, it would take a bad day. It can happen in T20 cricket, particularly if there's a bit of weather. The shorter the game, the more likely there is of an upset. But if we're talking 20 over cricket and we're going to get the full game in, then India are going to be too strong in that group. And then in Kingstown, Afghanistan take on Australia. See, this one I kind of feel like there's slightly more chance of Afghanistan just upsetting the apple cart. I don't know why. Maybe because I look at India as being a bit more kind of clinical. I know Australia are pretty decent at that stuff, and as I say, they did beat England, and I do remember that. They could do. I don't think they will. I think Australia will beat them, but I think maybe this one is where Afghanistan could just put together a bit of better performance than they would have done against India, and actually challenge Australia a bit more. That said, Australia could bat first and score 230, and obviously then Afghanistan would have no chance. Barbados. What a place. England versus the United States of America. Who on earth would have thought they'd be saying that in the Super 8s of the T20 World Cup? It's going to be England, isn't it? I do unfortunately think the USA are going to go winless through the Super 8s. They've done a fantastic job to get there in the first place. Just don't see it carrying on. So England then will finish on 4 points with the West Indies, who've still got South Africa to play, but we'll talk about that one in a minute. And we're back in Antigua for that game. The West Indies versus South Africa. Now, I've predicted the West Indies would have 4 points by now. South Africa would have had 2, where they would have beaten the USA, lost to England. Then I kind of feel like this is a must-win game for South Africa. I kind of feel like they're past the stage of bottling these tournaments. I feel like they probably will beat the West Indies. I feel like those 3 teams, I think it's a lottery between the 2 of them, between all 3 of them. And I think because I'm going to stick them all on 4 points each, somebody else can be smart enough to figure out net run rate and decide as to which one of these 3 teams actually goes through. I think South Africa will beat the West Indies, and I think people will be sitting around kind of going, oh, I don't know whether we got enough against the States, and did we chase it down quick enough? And I think it's a bit of a group of death, really, for the 3 of them. And don't get me wrong, like the USA aren't going to be a pushover. Australia versus India in St. Lucia. Don't think it matters. Both teams will be through by now. They'll both have beaten Afghanistan and Bangladesh respectively. Doesn't really matter. Maybe it'll be a seeding thing. Maybe one team will play one of the weaker options out of the other side. Although, again, I don't really think there is one with England, South Africa, and the West Indies. I don't think there's a weak option. Who do I think will win? Flip a coin. Doesn't matter. I'm gonna say Australia will beat India. But I wouldn't be surprised if these 2 teams play against one another again in the final. Finally, Afghanistan versus Bangladesh. Last game of the Super 8s. Again, I don't think it's going to matter. I think they'll have both lost their 2 games against Australia and India, and they'll be playing pretty much for a wooden spoon in Group 1 of the Super 8s. And with that in mind, kind of feels like a game that either Afghanistan could have packed their bags and gone home by now, or I don't really think it would count as an upset, to be honest, if Afghanistan beat Bangladesh. So I'm going to say it's Bangladesh. No, I'm going to say it's Afghanistan. Afghanistan are going to beat Bangladesh. Hey, look, if you've listened and watched this far through this video, thank you so much for being around. Make sure you've commented as to who you're picking for these fixtures in the Super 8s and who you're going to make through to the semi-finals and then the final. I think it'll be an India-Australia final. Then I think we're talking about India versus England, Australia versus the West Indies. And that's where I think we're going. So look, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.